A very, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and a very late good evening as well to a number of you who are joining me live at this point of time, either early morning or maybe quite late where you are. I'm quite excited and thrilled to have so many of you logging in and joining in live. Before I begin, I would like you to look up these two buttons on the control. I have enabled chat as well as questions and answers. Please feel free to use the chat feature to send me any messages if you wish, or maybe introduce yourselves with one another if you feel that could bring value to what you are doing. And if you can listen to me now live, I would love to get at least one message in the chat box that you can listen in and this is functioning well. Eager to listen in. Thank you. So that's fantastic. And now that I have this aside, that the chat box is also functioning, the Q&A is functioning, I'm quite excited to be talking to all of you today and sharing several updates, um, connecting the global ecosystem of one of the fastest growing industries within the fire safety world worldwide, because lots is to be done. And I'm glad to have so many members, as I would like to share an update from the board of directors. And I'm quite excited to say that the people who are here, who you see on your screen, who are the board members of the association, these are people like yourself, professionals who are extremely busy with their jobs, with their work, but also extremely passionate about fire stopping and compartmentation and bringing about the enablement that the association has been able to do for themselves, as well as the businesses that they run or the companies they work for. These are people who are owners, CFOs, managers, site managers, and even people who could be just estimating but have been able to provide an extremely important role to their business. I will today be, I asked one of the board members, Ben, who is the past president and also leads the international committee. And I asked him that, we would like to do this outreach. I'd love to hear from you. And unfortunately, the timing is something that doesn't quite align with everyone. So here is a recorded message from him before I move on with my talk.
Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to all of you joining us today for Connecting the Global Firestop family. Whether you are tuning in live right now, perhaps joining us at midday in Dubai, morning in Europe, or even in Asia Pacific, or perhaps you're listening to this recording at your convenience on demand, we're thrilled to have you with us. When you work in passive fire protection, you know that this trade comes with a very specific set of challenges. Fire stopping is one of the most critical life safety trades in modern construction, yet it's so often misunderstood. Whether you are a contractor on a job site navigating complex wall penetrations, or an inspector reviewing a joint assembly, or a code official trying to enforce standards, It can sometimes feel like you're working in isolation, alone on an island, trying to solve these heavy regulatory and technical hurdles all on your own. That is precisely why FCIA exists. You see, FCIA is built on a very simple but powerful idea that when like-minded professionals come together from all over the world, we can share our real-world experiences, build true camaraderie, and help each other understand and solve the toughest problems in our industry. When you get involved with FCIA, you realize very quickly, as I did, that you aren't fighting these battles alone anymore. You are part of a connected and supportive global family. When we look at building safety around the world, one thing is abundantly clear. Fire does not recognize borders, climate zones, or language barriers. The physics of fire containment remain identical whether a building is going up in South America, the Gulf region, Asia, or North America. What does change from country to country is awareness, code adoption, and execution. That is why our mission at FCIA centers around a single, uncompromising standard of quality. We advocate globally for the DIIM framework, ensuring that passive fire protection systems are properly designed, installed, inspected, and maintained throughout the entire life cycle of a building. Over the last few years, FCIA's global footprint has expanded significantly. But for us, expansion isn't just about growing a roster. It's about creating real, measurable impact on the ground. Across every region, we are seeing contractors, authorities having jurisdiction, testing laboratories, and manufacturers working tirelessly to raise the bar. So FCIA acts as a global bridge for these efforts. We bring internationally recognized benchmarks like third-party contractor qualifications through the FM 4991 and the UL Qualified Firestop Contractor Program. We come alongside and show local markets how to practically integrate them into their regional codes and project specifications. So, how does this advocacy actually work in practice? You see, the real engine behind all of this momentum is our FCIA committees. Our international committee and technical working groups aren't just sitting around talking about theory. They are active, practical engines of change. They gather real-world insights directly from practitioners in the field and turn them into actionable resources. Through our committee work, we are constantly building tools to support you and your team. We develop and update pre-test revision sessions and educational resources to help professionals prepare for the rigorous FM and UL exams. We work closely with testing agencies to expand flexible options like online exam scheduling, while continuing to organize crucial in-person regional exam sittings alongside major global trade shows like Intersect in Dubai. We collaborate directly with regional fire protection associations, building departments, and standards organizations to help shape code-neutral legislation that protects lives. You see, advocacy isn't an abstract exercise. It's about giving you, the contractor, the inspector, or the manufacturer, the precise knowledge, credentials, and network you need to succeed and elevate your local market. So this brings me to my most important message that I want to leave you with today. FCIA is not a static institution. It is a collection of like-minded individuals who together are changing the world. There are many opportunities for you to jump into our story, a story that's being written about the fire and life safety industry. So become a member, join a committee, invest some of your time and talent, and become a more integral part of changing our world. The friendships, business relationships, and technical insights you build here will stay with you throughout your entire career. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your day to be a part of this global gathering, and thank you for your commitment to fire and life safety. To walk us through how these global strategies apply directly to your region, I'm going to hand the stage back live to Abhishek, our Director of International Initiatives. He will be guiding you through our strategic regional updates, our code-neutral DIIM framework, ecosystem engagement, and the practical tools available to scale your Firestop business. Enjoy the session, and I look forward to meeting and working alongside many of you as we continue our mission. Abhishek.
Well, a big thank you to Ben. Ben has been a driver in enabling businesses and persons across the world. He himself has been actively involved in the association for most of the 3 decades that we have been around. And a lot of what he says encourages me extensively. And I have had countless conversations, not only with him and the board, but uncountable number of members and professionals around the world who continue to face similar challenges in the markets they are, who continue to overcome challenges and are so excited to learn from each other and enable the compounding effect of sharing knowledge and making the crossing of problems an easier situation to be in. As Ben mentioned, fire is the same all over the world, and the physics of containment is the same all over the world. In fact, I would add on, after my interaction with so many manufacturers, not only in North America, but Europe, the Nordic countries, Asia, China, Australia, that the fundamental chemistry and mechanics used to develop products are also quite comparable. And hence, when different regions who have evolved differently to create their lenses of evaluating products, writing the building codes might be different, but the framework is something that really unites everyone. And I'm going to talk about this today. But let me first begin by giving some of the updates of the activations that FCIA members have been busy with almost all around the world. I would start with the MENA region, which is close to me as I'm based here in Dubai. And we started the year fantastically with starting the new platform of conferences, which we call the PFP Con, or the Passive Fire Protection Conference, which started as a joint effort from the two associations, the Firestop contractors as well as the fireproofing contractors, as all of us truly believe in passive fire protection and how these bring about fire safety, life safety, as well as infrastructure. The 3.5 days of conference, which was organized with the Intersect Show, which sees a footfall of more than 50,000 people from across the region as well as worldwide, was quite successful. And if you are somewhere around in the region and would be planning for the Intersect Show or our conference in 2027 in January, do reach out to me, as we are going to build something much bigger and exciting. Some of the members are actually aware what we are doing. I was also actively involved in bringing together and educating stakeholders across Saudi Arabia, Qatar, in several events and activations, many in person and many online. I also conducted several meetings with officers, officials, as well as quasi government authorities in Saudi Arabia and UAE, not to mention the uncountable number of one-to-one conversations, many of whom are not yet public because we are busy building something that will benefit the members as well as the industry as a whole. We continued these efforts in many other parts of the world. With RSC in Bangladesh, we conducted some sessions educating the stakeholders and explaining them about the DIIM framework. We signed a memorandum of understanding with the Fire and Security Association of India, FSAI, an extensive network of professionals across the country, many of whom have now a special access to the Firestop education program parts and some of the resources that we have. Our association also engaged extensively with the newly formed Council of Fire and Life Safety Professionals in India, a group of like-minded professionals who are working away for a better implementation of the National Building Code in India across the fire safety. I co-chair the Passive Fire Working Group, which is just starting off and aims to bring about some adoptable systems that will bring about process and structure in delivering fire safety, specifically passive fire protection. Again, an uncountable number of meetings and interactions in person and online have been chipping away and creating several inroads across the data center, healthcare, and hospitality industry in India. And I'm hoping to make some of these more public in the coming months. In the ASEAN region, we enhanced and developed ahead the memorandum of understanding that we had signed with the Fire Protection Association of Australia and the Fire Protection Association of New Zealand. We conducted a 5-part webinar series bringing together the DIIM stakeholders, or the designers, installers, inspectors, also called IQPs there, and maintenance companies and businesses, in sharing more about the framework and the code neutrality that we are able to extend. I was there in Melbourne a couple of months ago presenting at Fire Australia, and I'm quite excited to be traveling in a week or so to Christchurch in New Zealand to be speaking at the Fire NZ show. In April, I was in Singapore, and the FCIA collective presented at the Performance-Based Design Conference held by SFPE, and I was lucky enough to interact with a number of stakeholders, government, non-government, meeting some members, and so excited to see that there are 2 FM-approved contractors who are in Singapore delivering world-class fire stopping in the country. I'm also quite excited to share that very recently we have signed an MOU with the Philippine Integrated Fire Protection Organization, or PIFPO, an industry association of like-minded professionals who are keen and eager to drive and implement a better framework for passive fire protection, specifically fire stopping and compartmentation. An extensively large number of online meetings and interactions that I have been able to conduct early mornings of my Dubai time and throughout the day in the ASEAN and Oceania region with many government, semi-government entities who are quite excited to learn and access some of the resources that we are extending to enable the adoption of the code neutral framework that I will be talking about in a bit. And the engagements continued across Latin America too. This is from my talk last year at the Fire Ensinado in Brazil, and our growing relationship with the Association of Associations which are focused on fire safety across the Latin American countries, that is LATAM PCI. And similarly, as we did in Australia and New Zealand, we partnered with IFC in South America and conducted a fantastic industry engagement 5-part webinar series where we had professionals who joined us across Latin American countries from Brazil to Costa Rica to Mexico to Chile to Argentina. And it was so encouraging to not only learn, but also see the big benefit of sharing as we brought together experts from around the world, enabling conversations and learning, something that Ben mentioned at the beginning. I would like to take a small pause to encourage anyone who's logged in to make sure that you can punch in some questions if you wish to have any interactions at the end of the discussion, at the end of this session. And feel free to use the chat platform to punch in any message that you may want to. Moving on, I would like to share some of the individuals who we are very excited to have enabled bringing them together across the DIIM framework of FCIA. These are professionals who have contributed to design, who have contributed extensively to the trade of installation, and continue to impact the industry positively. We also brought together individuals and experts across authorities, accreditation body, and consulting who are involved in inspection and maintenance. And I must be honest, this was one of the most fulfilling exercises for me as a person to drive, as I worked hard to enable conversation among professionals who speak different languages, but have a common language and motivation to drive fire safety and implement compartmentation effectively using and understanding the DIIM framework of FCIA. That said, while several of you might be quite familiar with FCIA's DIIM framework, today I'm going to spend a few minutes to break this down and bring about a slightly better understanding of the DIM framework, something that many of you are quite familiar with because I see a number of members who have logged in and are quite familiar with this logo, this insignia, but I want to drill down on this today. The DIM framework, which aims to bring together the complete life cycle right from the design stage, which starts sometimes in the offices of architects and design companies and engineering companies, right through installation, inspection, and after handover, when the real life of the buildings and infrastructure begins and lives anywhere from 50 to 100 years, and that is maintenance. And how the quality and processes are streamlined, structured for better adoption all over the world. We have published a white paper which not only defines this, but also gives a very good insight into understanding some of the means, tools, and mechanisms that are adopted in some countries where professionals like yourself who understood the building code or the intent of the building code in their respective countries and projected the DIIM framework to enhance and implement some of these tools. You may be able to download a copy of this white paper through the section of givables. You could probably see this logo somewhere on the control panel. And in case you are listening this as a recording and don't have access, you could scan the QR code and get a copy of this white paper. But to break down and talk a little more about how this becomes code neutral, the question that I often get asked when I go to countries and regions around the world who often say, well, we are not following the American Building Code or the ASTM or UL standards. How does this function for us? So I want to break down both quality and process, because it is the repeatability that can be brought about by processes that deliver quality, is what enables inspection and installation to be comparable all over the world, whichever code or standard you may be following. And we tap into some of the internationally used, developed, and accepted standards that are driving quality and process across industries of healthcare, pharmaceutical, food, minerals, electrical, oil and gas, you name it. Any and every industry use some of these standards to bring about repeatability. In case you are not familiar with, the ISO IEC 17065 is a standard which enables conformity assessment, not only for certifying products, but also processes and delivery of services. Some of you are familiar with certification bodies, not just the certification bodies which are international, like UL or FM or Intertech, but also some of the regional certification bodies, businesses like Johnson Hughes, who are in Australia, who run a lab and a certification body, or Thomas Bell Wright, which is here in Dubai, and several other certification players, which could be specific to Europe, South America, or India. We also talk about 17 or 20, which is the conformity assessment standards that enables the parity between professionals who are doing inspection and how that is brought about. And similarly, the ISO 17024 standard, which enables the parity to understand that different professionals who are working as contractors, as inspectors, and probably as designers or maintenance professionals, how their knowledge can be assessed and quantified. These international standards have been the basis of the development and evolution of several systems that have brought about a higher degree of assurance by enabling quantification of both responsibility and liability. A good part and a lot of effort which has been done by our members, hundreds of businesses, thousands of professionals across installation and inspection as trade, who enabled not only the creation of the manual of practice, but are through the work of committees powering the 8th and now the 9th edition, which is in progress. And as we have more and more professionals and members who are joining us from different countries, different building codes, different standards, this manual of practice continues to evolve, grow, and enable a common framework that is adoptable worldwide. Some of the tools that came out and are being used to deliver better assurance are the FM approved contractor program run on the basis of the FM 4991 standard, which embodies, just like the UL qualified Firestop contractor program, embodies 17,065 and 17,024 as the baseline standards to create a program that can be trusted for delivering much higher assurance into the work of installers and specialist contractors. And exactly in the same way, the manual of practice and the education and the work of members who enabled the creation of inspection standards, which were published through ASTM, enabled the creation of the accreditation criteria published by IAS, one of the accreditation bodies in the United States, who helps deliver a 17,020 based accreditation program that enables the delivery of inspections which are completely or much higher degree of trust because they involve parity between Inspector 1 and Inspector 2. I'll now talk about some of the engagement that you can do with the ecosystem and the tools that we have created to bring about better fire safety globally. Many of you who may be familiar with some of these tools, but I'll talk you through what you can do and how you may be able to access some of these tools. The manual of practice, which many of you might already have a copy with, is available selectively if you are an authority having jurisdiction, even complimentary, and to professionals who are in countries who are new to the FCIA's DIIM framework. Many of them who are joining us as new contractors have special access to this. And if you are one of those who is interested, please feel free to drop me a line, to reach out to us and access this manual of practice to learn more on how individuals around the world have been effectively using this. In addition to this, we have created an online on-demand program, which is called the Firestop Education Program. We are quite excited about this program because it not only embodies the manual of practice and what the DIIM framework talks about, but this Firestop education program is also enabling a massive amount of learning of the fire stopping trade worldwide. The program, which is about 40 hours of education divided over level 0, 1, 2, and 3, teaches and helps revise several frameworks like understanding and implementing the local building codes, technical regulations, being able to understand the certification listing evidences of how systems deliver the containment for fire stopping. But one of my most favorite is the deep down 20 plus hours of education explaining each and every type of fire stopping system, technology, as well as how any contractor, any professional can get into this trade, whether you are someone who's new to the trade or someone who is adjacent to being a fire stopping specialist, but is dealing with fire stopping material like mechanical, electrical, plumbing contractors, or professionals who may be having this adjacent trade but would love to learn. Because the fire stopping education program not only teaches you about the code and different types of fire stopping solutions and how they work, it also goes deep down to explaining and teaching estimation methods, project management methods, as well as how inspection can be done effectively. In the download section of the session today, you will be able to also download a overview copy of what the Firestop education program is. And in case you seek more information, you can go on our webpage or simply write to me. We have an extensive amount of live and recorded webinars that we continue to deliver and have been delivering for the last 3 decades. And as existing and new members, you can access this huge resource of learning and education as a member. As members, you also have access to a massive amount of other technical resources, which could be answers to challenges that have been faced by someone like you in another country, or templates for quality management systems, various other resources that enable the progress of you as a professional in the fire stopping world, wherever you may be. We have the magazine, which is the Life Safety Digest, which is the print and the electronic version. And he's been around for nearly 3 decades and has been enabling engagement across industries, sharing of thoughts and ideas. And you can access all the past issues and current issues online anytime. And of course, there is the newsletter, which shares updates of the code engagement and work of our members, working groups, as well as staff, as we support the enabling of better technical regulations, better standards around the world. But I would like to take a special focus on one of my favorite resource, and that is the working group. And I can tell you, as part of several of these meetings, this is where one of the most fulfilling part of being a member brings about satisfaction, as well as driving progress in learning through what each one of you has learned on the job, on your work, through the course of learning and progress that was brought about by each one of you. These working groups and committees enable professionals across the world and across the chain of whatever the kind of member company you may be working for, to come together and share best practices and learn and evolve the DIM framework's adoptability in your country, in your business, in your jurisdiction. And lastly, but most importantly, if any of you may have noticed, I did not touch up so much regarding design and maintenance. These are two areas where we believe an extensive amount of work will be done. An extensive amount of standardization will occur, and we as FCIA are at the forefront of this. We have recently opened a new type or a couple of new types of memberships. One, which is design, and these are professionals around the world who have been involved in design of not only fire and life safety, but understand mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems in their jurisdictions. And they are joining us as members. They are joining us to help improve design as we enable better fire stopping design that can be maintained throughout the life of a building. A key challenge that we have seen over conversations in the last 20 months across the stakeholders of DIIM, where we have seen that fire stopping has been designed without probably totally understanding the practical aspects and challenges of installation, inspection, and maintenance. And this is where new members from around the world are joining hands, reading through the resources, and are joining new working groups that are being launched as we speak. We are also enabling student members as we unite young students and professionals all over the world. We have members who are students who are joining us from Australia, from various countries, so that they can get ahead and take the benefit of being part of an industry which will, in my opinion, have among the fastest growth rates in the fire safety business. Now, as I come close to today's session and have a last few minutes, I would like to take a pause and let the attendees and listeners give a hand at the question and answer section. Please feel free to punch in some questions. And if we have time, which we do have about 10 minutes, we are going to probably have an open mic and have some conversation among the attendees who are here today. Please feel free to use not only the chat platform, but write a question, submit a question, and I'll give it a few seconds as I take a sip of water. As this is a key part of what we do, we enable engagement. So that said, this is the last part of today's talk and session. While I encourage members to consider sharing this with others and who may want to add to the collective of the international fire stopping and fire safety community, I would be taking some questions. I know some questions were sent earlier as well. So while I'm going to answer two questions that I already have, feel free to send some more. The first question, which comes often enough to me from specifically Europe and the UK, where many of my friends have asked that the current systems, the manual of practice, focuses primarily on American certification programs like the UL and FM certification programs. And how can this function when we are in the UK or in Europe? And sometimes this gets asked in other jurisdictions too. So a simple and a very interesting journey that many new businesses, many contractors are already taking is by understanding the framework of DIIM, by understanding how the American codes have been used to interpret and create certification programs for products, for systems, as well as for installers, and help enable either adoption of the same systems, because the systems and certification programs have been evolving. There are several product certification programs around the world that are offering certification and listing to European standards, to British standards, to Australia and New Zealand standards, and how to use them to increase the assurance of the work that is being delivered and decrease the potential liability that could come on you as a installer or as a contractor. Let me take some more questions. I have a question from Singapore, and I was there in April. The question is that how can FCIA's engagement plan with stakeholders, authorities, and certification bodies in Singapore is progressing? And thanks, Brendan, for that question. I'm very happy to share the fact that after my interactions with SCDF, with BCA, and with several other consulting companies, companies like WSP, where I've had a lot of interaction with these stakeholders. I've had meetings with them on how the DIM framework could be adopted, could be repurposed if required in Singapore. And I'd love to have a one-to-one meeting with you and any other stakeholder who is in Singapore to give them an update of the exact conversations I have had. Recently, we are working towards some very specific activations within Singapore and Thailand and Malaysia and Philippines. And we have on site 3 specific categories. I mentioned about these earlier as well. The hospitality industry, specifically conversations with some large international hotel chains who are very keen and eager to adopt the systems that have been coming out of the DIIM framework and how they can enable the reduction of liability for various stakeholders. And similarly, in data centers and the healthcare sector. So FCIA staff and some key members and partners like FM approvals and UL solutions have been having conversations with key stakeholders in the ASEAN region, Singapore as well, to enable these. So we'll be really happy to have a conversation with you. Please write to me and we can take this forward as well. I'll take another question from Shivesh Chaudhary. Who shall be responsible for a compromised installation? The main contractor, applicator, or the consultants? And how can we ensure to rule it out? Thanks, Shivesh, for this question. I think that's a fantastic question. And The DIIM framework actually solved this very, very well. It has been solving this prime challenge, that is liability and responsibility. And I'll start with two things first: the reliability and liability of the installer. When an installer has a certified back to it, or if you have an installer who, let us say, is approved under the FM certification program of installer, or is approved under the UL contractor program. And I'll share a practical incident. This is very close to the question you asked about responsibility, about compromised installation. So three things come out. The first is the trust on the qualified installer is very high, and hence this verified installer is able to sign in contracts with a much higher degree of confidence, saying, I know the code in the country, I understand the technical regulations, and I understand the technical specifications, and am able to raise a flag to say when things are not being done right. Here, it's quite common sometimes in countries where technical regulations are not strict for two or three qualified installers to not behave as per the norms. So there was an incident here in one of the Gulf countries where a installer reached out to the certification player who had certified them as an installer, saying that I have been outbid on a job because my estimation of the material cost itself is, let's say, 3 million. And my competitor, who is also approved by the same certification body as I am approved, has bid the job for less than 3 million. So for sure, they're doing something wrong and will have a compromised installation. In such an instance, this contractor reached out to the certification body, and the certification body sent out an inspector auditor to the site and found irregularities. And this certified installer was delisted, and the project and the authority were sent out a letter saying, we as a third-party certification body do not back such and such contractor on such and such project. This is huge, and it is a very big deterrent, and it works outside the scope of the law of the land. And exactly in the same way, the assurance to bring about, as I said, the quantification of liability and responsibility of the stakeholders, that is an inspection body, this quantification becomes much better. And that's how the progress has been compounding in several countries. And now we see some large international players, as I talked about hospitality, who are considering to put this within their specifications to mandate a certified installer or an accredited inspector to do the job. Something that already is delivered quite extensively by FM as an insurer, and on several large projects where they insure, they mandate a certified installer to come and do the job. I hope that helps, Shivesh. I'll take another question from Steve Bradburn. How do global members deal with inspectors' interpretations differing from installers? This often causes issues with clients. I'll read out the question again, and this is a good question, Steve. And I'm hopefully going to be in Christchurch, and I should be able to, answer this well. But a couple of things. The first is the fact that within the framework of a jurisdiction, when all the stakeholders understand the DIIM framework well, they are aware of the responsibilities and liabilities of the four key stakeholders: designers, installers, inspection companies or inspectors, and maintenance companies. So if I were to give an example, very specific, Steve, to New Zealand, where you have um, PS, the producer statement. So you have businesses who are publishing PS1, which is the producer statement one, PS2, PS3, PS4, which kind of helps to quantify the responsibility and liability of the designers, the installers, um, the fire consultants who are the inspectors, as well as probably the IQPs who come in much later. When all of these understand and speak the common language, and they can access some of the common tools saying, what are the standards that have been either published in country for standardization of inspections, or they can look back to, for example, I mentioned that FCIA members enabled two installation inspection standards. Of course, these are published under ASTM, but these standards themselves provide a great insight into how inspections can be standardized. And similarly, the accreditation criteria 291 or AC 291, this is a public document you can also refer to on the website of IAS, which is an accreditation body from the United States. It defines and enables the interpretation to be standardized among inspectors and installers. And this is one of the key aims of us as FCIA, enabling a common framework, which is the DIIM framework. So I hope this kind of gives some sort of an answer, but I can, of course, take your question at a greater length when we are talking either in person or online in a meeting. Great. I have a lot of excitement from questions from New Zealand, and that's nice. Thanks. Paddy, good to see you here. And I'm going to take your question saying in New Zealand, most installation companies carry 10 to 20 million public liability insurance. In reality, the installation companies are not subject to the level of liability that they should have. At the end of the project, the liability sits with the fire engineer or the council. Why not the installation contractor? Thanks, Paddy. This is, of course, a moot point. This is the kind of conversations that FCIA and associations bring about and help crystallize and granulate answers to. And as I encourage you to be joining us as an association, members who are installers, who are designers in various countries, can tap into how similar businesses evolved from where you are now to where they have been or they have reached by looking into some of their systems that are functioning quite well. So yes, these are questions that need answers, but only when we have all the four stakeholders, DIIM, who are able to meet regularly, talk with each other regularly, they will be able to very easily compartmentalize, and I love to use this term here, their responsibilities and their liabilities more clearly. So yes, there are great tools and evolution of systems. You have the PS systems in New Zealand. We have other technical regulations that have come to play in countries like Qatar or UAE, where the authorities have less resources to get into doing inspections themselves and have adopted some of the other tools that assure repeatability of installation and repeatability and quantification of liability of inspectors quite well. I think I have one more question that I'll take, or I'm not sure if this is a question. We are at the top of the hour, but there is a long query from India from our member Muhammad Atharwala, who says that I'll try to quickly read about how the International Building Code, the IBC 27, can possibly integrate with the National Building Code of India, which is the NBCS 2026. And I'll give a very simple answer to this, that as more and more individuals, professionals in the country across the flow of the contract, from architects to designers to building owners, installers, businesses involved in inspection, businesses involved in maintaining infrastructure, when they are all aware and equally educated about the DIIM framework, we can better evolve in not only creating some of the local systems in India, but also enabling all of these. So it's quite encouraging to see a number of new businesses in India who have been becoming not only members, but also accessing some of the resources from the association. So this is quite encouraging. And I'm quite sure that as this progresses and as we as an industry association enable the journey of quantification and sharing knowledge, it is something that will drive the progress that we all envision and are able to take the biggest altruistic goal of contractors. Because just imagine, this is an industry body, a trade association that has been brought about by specialist contractors who are very keen and eager to share these systems so that they can drive progress of contractors and fire stopping professionals around the world to take advantage of what their learnings have been and how they have progressed across the problems. With that, I'm going to close today's session, and a very, very big thanks to each one of you who spared their time, who engaged with us very late in the evening, very early in the morning in some cases, and for anyone else who might be listening in to this recorded session. A big thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to connecting with you, having you being more active in one of the committees, or becoming a member if you are not a member yet, to tap into some of the fantastic resources and enable the work across the world. Thank you very much, and we will close this session today. Bye bye.